This piece of scrap wood is worth absolutely nothing, but today I'm going to show you how to turn it into a nice little pocket hole jig that you can just throw away when you're done. For those of you who don't know what a pocket hole jig is, this is a device that allows you to drill holes at an angle, and that allows you to join different pieces of wood together by their edges. And as you can see, that's pretty handy for all kinds of different woodworking projects. Let's get going. To get started, I'm going to turn this scrap piece of wood into a 1x2. A 1x2 is the perfect size for making a pocket hole jig. So if you have a 1x2 laying around, you won't need to use a table saw at all today. You just need to make sure that it's at least 8.5 inches long. The longer the better, that just makes it safer to work with. Next, let's take a 3/16 inch drill bit and drill 2 holes in the very end of this thing. Let's go about 3 inches deep with these holes. You want these holes to be as straight as possible, so obviously a drill press would be best, but I don't have one, so this will work just fine. Next, let's take a 3/8 inch drill bit and drill these holes out one more time. Alright, here's what those holes should look like once we're done. And as you can see, mine aren't perfect, but this is still going to work. Okay, so next I'm going to take a scrap piece of plywood. This one just so happens to be 3/4 of an inch wide. And I'm going to make a little jig. That way I can cut my 1x2 at a sharper angle. To do this, I'll set my miter saw at a 45-degree angle. Next, I'll cut a 45-degree angle out of my scrap piece of plywood here. Now the length of this thing really doesn't matter, but I think I'll cut it to 1 foot long. My scrap piece of plywood is 5.5 inches wide, and that seemed to be perfect for today's job. And once again, I cut it to 12 inches long. Next, we need a scrap piece of wood that's about 1.5 inches wide and 12 inches long. You'll see what we're going to do with this here in just a second. Let's attach these two pieces with wood glue and finishing nails. Be careful which direction you attach these two pieces. If you assemble it like I did here, you're going to have a left-handed jig, and that's going to be kind of hard to work with if you're right-handed like I am. I ended up having to tear mine apart so I could assemble it the other direction. There we go, that'll work a lot better. Next, let's set our miter saw at a 25-degree angle. Then we'll attach our new little jig to the side of the miter saw fence using a small clamp. Next, let's pull out our 1x2 again. Let's make a mark 2.5 inches over from the side with holes on it. Alright, let's go ahead and cut this piece out. And be careful here if you're working close to the blade. Alright, this is what we're after right here. And as you can tell, the long side is the one that's 2.5 inches long. I'm not sure if it needs it, but I'm going to sand mine down just a little bit. Make sure you hold on to the rest of that 1x2. And let's go ahead and cut the angle off of it here. Then we'll glue and clamp these pieces together. Once you glue and clamp these two pieces together, you can allow them to dry overnight and skip this next part. But I'm a little bit impatient, so I'll attach these two pieces with the screw in the center here. And I'm using oak to make this jig today, so I definitely want to pre-drill this hole, and I'll countersink the head. Hey, now it's starting to look like a pocket hole jig. Now let's head back over to the bench vise and chase these two holes all the way through the material with a 3/8 inch drill bit. As you can see, these are not the cleanest cuts. I probably should have got a new drill bit out to do this. But guess what? This thing's still going to work just fine. You'll see in just a minute. If you want, you can skip this next part, but I think I'll countersink the front of these holes just a little bit. That'll make it look a little cooler, I think. Next, on the bottom of the jig, from the thicker side, let's measure over 4¼ inches. And we're going to cut right on this mark using the miter saw. And this is going to work perfectly for drilling holes in material that's 3/4 inch thick. If you want to make one for thicker material, I recommend adding 3/16 inch for every 1/4 inch of thickness. Pull out some of that scrap wood you have laying around and play around with it a little bit. Now let's grab a piece of thinner material and cut a 1½ by 1½ inch square. This one's just a scrap piece of oak, but you could just use a piece of 1/4 inch plywood for this if you want. And this is all we're after right here. And I'll just attach this to the back of our pocket hole jig. And you could attach this piece by using wood glue and a clamp, but I'm impatient, so I'll attach this piece with a screw as well. And once you got this piece installed, you could be done with your pocket hole jig, but I think I'll clean mine up with a little bit of sandpaper. I'm pretty stoked to see how this thing works. As you can tell, it would have been a little bit nicer to have a drill press to make these holes perfectly straight. But as you can tell from my video, it still works even if the holes are a little bit crooked. Now I did come back after the fact and drill a couple holes in the front here to allow sawdust to escape when I'm drilling. To be honest, I really don't see a need in doing that to yours. I don't see much sawdust getting out here, do you? Now, go raid that scrap wood pile and see if you can build one for yourself. Thanks for watching today's video on how to build this disposable pocket hole jig. If you try this project out yourself, let me know in the comments below how it turns out. Also, if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this one right here. I'll see you over there. Subscribe.